Trauma is ugly. It likes to raise its ugly little head at the best of times and the worst of times. It loves you to be alone, feeling worthless and unwanted. It loves to come in the dead of night when you think the world is filled with light and rip you to shreds. It likes to bring out the worst of you when you want to show the best. It likes to bring up past memories when you need to think and process clearly. And it loves to leave you bleeding and pleading on the floor, broken and alone. This is a post I wrote on my blog channel last month after a PTSD episode. I have briefly talked about having PTSD and burnouts on this channel, and when I used it, my old vlog channel, but I never really sat down and discussed how it's like, for me personally, living with PTSD and how it has affected me in any and all aspects of my life, such as relationships, from friendships to romantic and even my professional relationships. In some shape or form, everyone at some point in their lives will deal with some kind of trauma. From a simple breakup to losing a loved one, getting a divorce, or something even more traumatic like a car crash or military conflicts and combat experience, or even rape and abuse. Most of the time when people hear the mention of PTSD, they think of someone who's gone to war. The number of times people have asked me in a very condescending way, "What war did you survive?" I've gone to where I say one closer to home, because the trauma that I experienced happened when I was supposed to feel safe. The struggle I deal with that's related to my particular form of PTSD is because I struggle with complex PTSD caused by multiple traumatic events, many of which have reinforced the traumas I experienced as a child later on in life as a teenager and an adult. Another is the fact that a good portion of my trauma happened when I was too young to remember anything beyond the physical sensations that triggered emotional responses, such as smells, taste, volume of voices, or the way someone touched me. Finding an effective therapist has been another challenge. The majority of my therapists want to bring up the repressed memories from my childhood traumas which occurred before my brain could really fathom my surroundings, before I had words or connections or even reasons. It was just a simple sound, a shape, a color, a smell, or a touch. It hurt, felt weird, suffocating, cold, burned, blinded. My more recent traumas, those I can remember with great vivid detail. However, none of my therapists have wanted to touch on those newer traumas until the older traumas have been dealt with. With time, I have learned when I am going into a vulnerable state that could lead to me becoming triggered more easily. My recent PTSD trigger, however, came on so quickly, I didn't even realize I triggered until it was too late. I knew I was in a vulnerable state. I had failed to communicate to the other person involved, and instead fucked up something that, well, let's just say I fucked up big time. And that fuck up and experience honestly has scared the living shit out of me. Even now, weeks later, looking back, it still scares me. I'm still processing. I'm still trying to figure out why I hadn't been able to quick and communicate properly. The trigger was caused by miscommunication. It wasn't until I'd realized the miscommunication that I also finally realized what had triggered me and why. It was a reinforced trauma. Like Pavlov's dog, I just automatically responded. The trauma was originally put in place by someone who was supposed to be a protector. Later, it was reinforced by someone whom I thought had been a friend. I often struggle with things in our society, the way our society pursues things, such as all of the Karen videos that like to circulate on social media. I often see these people who look like me when I have a full PTSD episode, especially the younger me who hadn't gone to a place where she could properly process and get the help she needed in order to get out of that kind of state. At least due to years of healing and therapy, I now instead often shut down instead of lashing out and yelling. But I do still feel like when I see these type of videos, I'm looking at a mirror while hearing the things people say about these Karens. I feel like they're talking about me. This is how we in America treat trauma. This is how we treat people who deal with trauma. Like it's a joke. And these people deserve to be placed in an insane asylum, not treated as people who have not sufficiently dealt with their trauma. And then we often wonder why people don't open up or deny these sorts of things about themselves. I like to end today's video with a quote that really hit home for me. The people in your age group who did not experience a life-altering trauma absolutely had an advantage over you. Your brain was focused on survival and they were free to grow and develop. You may feel behind, but it's because you were doing your best to survive. One of my friends added, but then you are able to outgrow those who did not survive trauma because you have a deeper understanding of life than they do. Much like my sexuality doesn't define me, my trauma also doesn't define me. But it's a part of me. It always will be, and no amount of therapy and healing will ever change that. But I hope with this type of video, you'll know that you're not alone.